Hello and welcome back to Nathan Bell's podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe and share with your friends. Today, Nate would like to talk about some of the previous jobs that he's had.
Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about some jobs I've had. I've been on the. I had a psychosis when I was about 19, and they put me on the disability support pension. I'm 37 now. I've been on the disability support pension since I was 19, 20 years old. But I'm not a guy who's happy and content just to sit around on the disability support pension. I prefer to work, so I've always been very active in seeking employment. And so I didn't work at all for the period of about the age of 20 through to 25. I did some paid work as a mental health advocate doing public speaking and stuff around mental health consumer issues, and I was paid for that, so you can sort of class that as work, but it certainly wasn't frequent ongoing work. But I didn't really work between 20 and 25, and then when I was about 25 I started doing some cash in hand car detailing for a guy out Cessnock Way, and I worked for him for about a year washing cars, and he gave me plenty of work 2 or 3 days a week, and he would just take private contracts washing people's cars very thoroughly for them, very thorough detail. And I did that for about a year for him, and he paid me about $25 an hour to do that, and that was good. And then after that, I went to a job network in Maitland, and the job network in Maitland got me a job washing cars at a car yard in Maitland, at a sales car yard in Maitland. And so initially the job washing cars was all the cars that were on display on the yard for people to buy. We would go around, me and the team, and we would wash them down and hose them down and then chamois them. And I did that for about 6 months of that job, and then the car yard started giving me work in the service wash section, which was more regular work, and it was longer days because the washing the car yard cars was only about a 4-hour day, but the service wash was about an 8-hour day. And so I worked in the service wash then at the car yard for about 2 years after that. And the service wash was pretty hard work, because you'd have a lot of cars that had to get done in the day. You'd have about 30, 40 cars on an average day, and these were cars that were being serviced by the mechanics, so they would get a complimentary wash coming with the service from the mechanics. And all the cars had times where they had to be out, so like a car would come in at like 9 in the morning or 8 in the morning, and it would be scheduled to be picked up at 11:30 or 12:30 or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, so you had to have that car done by that time. And that was the case with all the cars. They all had times throughout the day where they were due to be picked up, and you couldn't keep the customers waiting. So sometimes you'd have to wait for the mechanics to finish with the car before you could wash it, and the mechanics would finish up just before the car was due to be picked up, and you'd have to rush around and get it cleaned properly in time for the owner to come and pick it up. But what you'd try to do at the start of the day is wash as many cars that were waiting to be serviced before the mechanics got to them, so they were out of the way and done and ticked off the list, and then you come to the cars as the mechanics finished them, and it was very fast-paced work because you had all these cars that had to be out at this certain time, and you usually had about 30, 40 cars a day. Like an average day was 25 to 30 cars that needed to be washed, and some days it was more like 40, and some days it would even go as high as 50 cars that needed to be washed in the 8-hour day. And so what the wash included, we would shine the wheels, we would clean the wheels down with spray engine degreaser on the wheels and clean the wheels, spray engine degreaser on the engine and clean the engine, hose the engine, vacuum out the car, and wash the car down and hose the car down and chamois the car so that it was nice and sparkling and clean. So usually it took about 20-30 minutes to get through a car, 15-20-30 minutes to get through a car, depending how dirty it was, and they certainly expected it to be pretty clean at the end. So it was very fast-paced work, and there was a lot of cars to get through, and 8-hour days I was working doing that. And so as I said, I did that for about 2 years, and then I'd had enough of it. I was very worn out from that job, and I'd had enough of it, so I moved on and left that job and took a break from working for a couple of months. But then the job network got me onto another car yard, and I did the same thing, washing the cars on the yard, and then moved into the service wash again, and I just stayed at that car yard for about 6 months and washed cars at that car yard. And then I decided I just didn't want to detail cars anymore, because detailing cars is nasty work. You come home stinking of all these chemicals. You stink of degreaser, you stink of tyre shine, you've got all these chemicals all over you, and it's very physical work. So I just absolutely had enough of detailing cars and decided I never wanted to detail cars again. So I left the second car yard. Then I didn't work for about 6 months and was just on the pension. Then the job network got me a job at a pub out Cessnock Way, and I worked at the pub for the next 2 years. And at the pub I worked in the bottle serving customers, and that was pretty good work. And at the start it was pretty good, and I liked the work and I enjoyed working at the pub, and I got along with everyone. I once had a guy come in and grab a carton of beer and just run off with it, and I chased him down and tried to confront him and stop him, and they told me, the staff at the pub told me not to do that if that ever happened again. They said, don't confront anyone, just come and tell us, that's what the cameras are for. So I worked at the pub in the Bottle for about 2 years. I really wanted them to move me into training me to work behind the bar, but that didn't happen. And anyway, then because for some reason they weren't happy with me. I couldn't really explain why, but the relationship started to deteriorate. I don't think they trusted me. I was getting a bit depressed at the time, I think is what it came down to, and I was very morbid and depressed a lot of the time. I wasn't feeling very well. But after about 2 years, I left because I felt like they were going to fire me, and I just walked out one day. And it's a shame I just walked out, because I really liked that job and enjoyed working at the pub while I was there. Then I didn't work again for a number of years, and then the next job that I had, I worked for Reliability, and I've been working for Reliability doing various tasks for the owner Michael for about, I think I've been working on and off for Reliability for nearly 3 years now, maybe 4 years. And I've done various tasks for Reliability. I've done some video editing, I've done some stuff in Photoshop, which I've been paid for. I've even done some admin tasks, and I've done a lot of marketing and sending emails, seeking promotion for Reliability. And absolutely my favourite job so far has been the work with Reliability. Now, for the most part, while I was working with Reliability, it's been subsidised employment under supported employment, so part of my pay comes from my NDIS funding, and I'm provided with a support worker while I'm working for Reliability. But in the last few months I've been taken off supported employment, and Michael's put me on the normal books, so I'm just getting paid straight out of the business's pocket, and none of the pay is coming from my NDIS plan at the moment. I'm just being paid as a regular employee, because Michael feels I've earned that, and he feels I've shown that I can work and be effective at my roles, and I don't need support for employment anymore, so I'm no longer getting paid a subsidised wage. And I want to point out, the work at the car yards and the pub was also subsidised employment under a previous scheme by the government to get people with mental illness who are on the pension into employment. So yeah, a lot of my employment has been subsidised by the government, and a section of my pay has come from taxpayers. Now I'm just happy to be working, and I've always been happy when I've had jobs to be working. So if people are upset that my pay has been subsidised by the taxpayer, that's unfortunate, but I'm just happy to be working and to be earning extra money. And as I said, now Michael has taken me off supported employment, so my pay is coming straight from the business's pocket, and none of my pay is coming from the taxpayer, so that's good. So now I'm a regular normal employee, and I think this is the first job aside from the cash in hand jobs where I have been on the books as a regular employee without subsidies. I'll also point out that just before I did the car detailing, I caught chickens for steggles for a few months. For about 2 or 3 months, I caught chickens for steggles, and that was where you would go into the sheds where all the chickens were kept, and you'd pick them up, and you'd have to get, they wanted you to get a chicken's legs between each finger, and they wanted you to get 2 chickens between your thumb and your finger, and then 1 chicken between each other hand, and load them onto the trucks. And that was the most terrible job I have ever had in my life, catching chooks for steggles. It was awful. Absolutely hard work. The birds would flap and they would hurt your hands, and it stunk, and you'd come home stinking of all this bird shit. It was just absolutely terrible work. But this is where we're up to now. I'm working for reliability. I'm on the books as a normal employee, and I'm not receiving subsidised income for one of the first jobs that's happened in my life. And hopefully I continue with reliability and get more hours and increase my role in the company and go on to be able to earn a livable income and come off the pension. I'd like to get off the pension and be off welfare entirely, so that would be my goal. So anyway, there's some information about some of the jobs I've had. As I said, I've been on the pension for 17 years, but I've worked regularly. So drop a comment in the comment section about some of the jobs you've had.